have to say, this is a particularly special group because there's someone here who I studied in the 11th and 12th grade with, who probably saw me in my first play ever. There's someone here who directed me as a performer in my first play ever. And there's an entire group of artists here from Kashmir who I'm working with at the moment. So it's a very special group of people here today. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you all. This is going to be quite informal. I thought I would begin by reading a few extracts from Theatre and War, a book that I've put together that I published about, I think, a year and a half ago, that draws on a decade's worth of experiences in conflict and post-conflict zones in different parts of the world. The book itself has two different kinds of narratives. There are the more informal autobiographical narratives that I talk about the things that I've done, and most importantly for me, the mistakes that I've made along the way. The second narrative is a little more academic and a little more theoretical. Since I didn't know what kind of crowd to expect, I'm going to go with the autobiographical narratives here. There's a couple of extracts that I'm going to read, and then it's going to be open for discussion. Please feel free to ask questions from any part of the reading itself, or something that is alluded to in the reading, or something completely out of the blue. It's all good. So my work in this particular realm of theatre and war began in 2005 in northern Uganda, which, as most of you might know, Uganda is in Central East Africa, and the North has been seeing conflict since 1986. Visualize, if you can, an internally displaced people's camp in northern Uganda. Rows and rows of huts so close together that if one of them caught fire, the whole camp would probably go down in flames in seconds. Barefoot, malnourished children, men without jobs, women with nothing but a cup of beans to feed a family of 7 for a week, no shelter from the rain, no drains in the toilets, and a life that is defined by waiting. Waiting for the end of the war, waiting for the government and the rebels to make a deal, waiting for the international community to harbor a solution, just waiting. One sunny, humid afternoon, I went to such an IDP camp with a theatre group. Utterly intrigued by the idea that they were going to perform in an IDP camp, I told myself that this was the essence of the kind of work that I wanted to do. And although signing a disclaimer for the NGO coordinating the event made me a little bit nervous, the camp was on the outskirts of town and we weren't quite sure when the rebels would attack, so the NGO had to have us sign disclaimers in case something happened. Although having to sign the disclaimer made me a little nervous, I decided to go along for the ride. And here is part of a play that I witnessed. People are praying in a church as they sing praises to the Almighty, which in this case was Jesus Christ. A group of rebels storm into the church with guns and machetes. They threaten to kill everyone there. Frightened, one man in the church begins to pray harder. The rebels are so impressed with this man's devotion and are so impressed by the fact that he is saved, which in this context meant that he was a born-again Christian, that they did not kill him. The rebels decided to let the people live and go on their way. Huddled next to a translator, I watched the play unfold, and slowly but surely I began to realize the point that the play was making. This theater group had gone to the IDP camp in order to tell people that they should be saved, that is, they should become born-again Christians if they wanted to come out of the war alive. Being saved was the answer, no matter what the question. The play ran for 3 very long hours and was then followed by priests who carried on with the message put forward by the actors. The Italian NGO funding the play, the actors in the play, and the priests who came on after the performance wanted a very specific message to be sent out to the inhabitants of the camp, a message from which they wanted a very specific and tangible outcome. They wanted an audience of converts, an audience of the saved. That aside, there is one moment from that afternoon that I still remember very vividly. At the beginning of the play, the audience, we, had been warned. There will be a scene where the actors will come out dressed in rebel uniforms, we were told. When this happens, please don't worry, it's just part of the play, they're only actors. We were not told when in the play it was going to happen, we were just told that it was going to happen. An hour into the play, during the church scene that I just told you about, men in camouflage burst upon the stage. My heart lurched. I thought about that disclaimer that I had to sign earlier that morning. I thought about the fact that the war was not over yet. The men in camouflage burst on the stage, and I thought they were the rebels. And I wasn't alone. Every child in the audience leapt up from her seat and began to run. Some crying, others just fleeing. In a war that had primarily brutalized children, the kids had been warned from very young ages to run when they think the rebels are coming. The rebels came on stage, and run they did. It might not sound like something too serious. I mean, they were children after all. They didn't know what they were watching was a play. But yet, if that reaction, that impulse to flee, does not make one sit up and take stock of reality, what will? Seeing those kids start up and run, hearing intermittent crying for about 10 minutes after that fateful scene, seeing the priest then come on stage and tell people to be saved, these are moments that I cannot ever forget. Moments that I just watched as they happened. What was the artist's intention here? I began to ask myself. What was their intention in creating a work that they knew might terrify some or all of their spectators? If their intention was simply to save their audiences, how are they negotiating the ethics of that decision? And given that the funding for the work came from an Italian NGO that had a very specific agenda of religious conversion, how were the northern Ugandan artists negotiating their own intentions with those of the funding body? Given how troubled I was by the intentions of this particular intervention, I began to ask myself what kind of work I could create as an outsider traveling to particular zones of conflict. Fast forward a few years later, after graduate school, I had decided for various reasons to move to Rwanda, also Central East Africa, bordering country to Uganda. And at that time, I told myself that the move would be for the unforeseeable future. I was going to live in Rwanda forever, if that worked out. Partnering up with two colleagues, one Rwandan and one non-Rwandan, we drafted a proposal for a really ambitious project. We were going to start a cultural center in Kigali, the capital of Rwanda, that would focus on the use of theater in post-conflict reconstruction of the nation by creating professional productions and conducting community-based theater workshops. I'm being very sarcastic about my own work, which we can come back to at some point. I was very, I think, naively idealistic about what theater could do at that point. The road to setting up this cultural center and beginning to work on our first production was full of many anticipated struggles, dealing with interminable amounts of paperwork, networking, grant proposals, and the like. What was more striking than these expected challenges, though, were the ones that were completely unexpected, the ones that had to do with my being an outsider to that context of Rwanda. One particular stressful day was set to culminate with an audition for our first production, which was an adaptation of a two-person play where a mother comes face to face with a soldier who killed her daughter during a war. With the casting of the actress playing the mother under our belt, my colleagues and I were on the lookout for a young male Rwandan actor to play a soldier, or the soldier in this case. On a veranda in one of the more elite neighborhoods in Kigali, we auditioned a talented young man, and when he finished the audition and left, my non-Rwandan colleague and me were left on the veranda discussing our impressions of him. And after discussing the quality of the young man's work and how we thought his talents might apply to our production, my colleague turned to me and said, "What do you think he looks like?" I recall not understanding the question at first, or choosing not to understand the question. What does he look like? I probably repeated. You know, she said, do you think he looks like someone from that tribe? You know, the tribe that was accused of perpetrating the genocide in 1994? I remember an uncomfortable silence. I don't remember exactly what I said. I just remember a deep sense of unease with that question. Was my colleague simply being honest about noticing differences in physical appearance, while most others, while aware of such differences, would not discuss them for fears of being politically incorrect? Or was my colleague stating something potentially inflammatory, something that was completely unethical for us to be addressing as outsiders to the Rwandan context? I tried to draw parallels between her question and my own lived experience. I come from Coimbatore in Tamil Nadu. So I asked myself, what if I went to an audition in Coimbatore for a play that was directed by people who were outsiders to that context? What if those directors were creating a play in my city, a city that has known periods of violent animosity between Hindus and Muslims? What if this play sought to perform some of these conflicts toward helping with some sort of recovery or reconciliation, and then what if these directors tried to decide if I looked Hindu or Muslim? Drawing this parallel unsettled me immensely. In Rwanda, with more elements placing me on the outside rather than the inside, I was often at a loss. While I was able to, at a very basic level, assume an understanding and connection with the context in which I worked, given my goals to create change and to contribute to post-conflict reconstruction to theater, my positioning or my way of negotiating my positioning just did not allow this to happen. The kind of commitment that it would have taken for me to alter that positioning, to have learned Kinyarwanda, the local language, to have made a more concerted effort to not get stuck in expatriate circles, I was just not able or willing to put in that work. If I had known then what I know now about the ways in which a theater practitioner's position on the insider-outsider continuum might affect the execution of the work, I possibly would not have chosen to go to Rwanda in the first place. It was these questions that eventually brought me back home to India, and I say home in quotation marks because coming back made me realize the many ways in which I remain an outsider here as well, and that it's still somewhere on a continuum of being an insider and outsider that I have to negotiate. There were a couple of years of trying projects both in Nagaland and in Kashmir and trying to see where I might be better positioned to work. And a few years ago, to my delight, I met these wonderful artists in Kashmir, and we've been working together for the last 5 years. And we are currently, well, outside Pune in Kamshed, working on creating a 24-hour theatrical experience, maybe, where the audiences would come and live in our theatrical Kashmir for a day and experience some of the stories that we've put together over the last 5 years. I'm using a lot of ifs and maybes because this is the first time we're trying this, and I don't want to say too much if it doesn't work out the way we hope it will. So that's an overview of the work.